In 2015, Forbes put Elizabeth Holmes on its cover. Net worth $9 billion. Youngest self-made female billionaire in American history. She had no medical degree, no science PhD. She dropped out of Stanford at 19. And the technology she claimed to have invented, the thing that made her a billionaire, did not work. It had never worked. Not when she was raising money. Not when patients were getting test results that were wrong, sometimes dangerously wrong. This is not a story about ambition getting out of hand. It's a story about how a broken machine gets valued at $9 billion. And why that keeps happening. It's 2003. Holmes is 19, a Stanford freshman. She has one obsession. What if you could run hundreds of lab tests from a single drop of blood taken from a finger prick? No needles, no vials, instant results, cheaper than anything on the market. A little black box she called the Edison, sitting in every Walgreens in America. Genuinely great idea. The problem is it doesn't exist. She drops out of Stanford, founds Theranos, a blend of therapy and diagnosis, and starts raising money. And here is where it gets interesting. Silicon Valley at the time had a very specific religion. Fake it till you make it. Move fast. Disrupt first. Figure out the details later. Holmes spoke that language fluently. The Edison box was real. It just couldn't do what Holmes said it could. The technology to run hundreds of complex tests on a single finger prick drop doesn't exist even today. Blood chemistry is unforgiving. Tiny samples produce unreliable results. You need volume. You need precision. That's why labs use the amount of blood they do. So what did Theranos actually do? They diluted patient samples and ran them through standard Siemens machines, equipment any hospital lab already owned. The Edison box handled a fraction of the panel. The rest was quietly outsourced. They were a middleman pretending to be a breakthrough. A 2016 investigation found Theranos had voided or corrected tens of thousands of test results. Patients were being told they might have HIV. Others were told they didn't have conditions they actually had. Doctors making treatment decisions based on numbers a broken box produced. Between 2003 and 2015, Theranos raised over $900 million. Look at who wrote the checks: George Shultz, Henry Kissinger, James Mattis, who became Secretary of Defense. Rupert Murdoch put in $125 million personally. Notice what's missing from that list. Scientists, doctors, anyone who understood blood diagnostics. Holmes kept Theranos private. No public disclosures. No audited financials. No independent validation. Investors got a tour of the lab and a vision of the future. The $9 billion valuation was never based on revenue. It came from a single investor round, mathematically extrapolated to the whole company. You pay a price for a small slice and the math does the rest. That's how Silicon Valley valuations work. You're not buying what the company is. You're buying a story about what it will become. The story, in this case, was fiction. In October 2015, Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou broke the story. Holmes went on CNBC the same day and called it factually incorrect. She said it with the confidence of someone who had never been wrong. The FDA had flagged concerns since 2013. A federal inspection in 2015 found the lab posed immediate jeopardy to patient health and safety. None of this was hidden. It was ignored. In 2018, Holmes was indicted on federal fraud charges. In January 2022, she was convicted on 4 counts. She was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. But here's what Theranos actually was. Not an anomaly. A stress test. Venture capital works by suspending scrutiny, betting on stories about the future, not proof in the present. That logic produces Amazon, Google, SpaceX. It also produces this. The incentive to sound certain is greater than the incentive to be right. In healthcare, that gap has a body count. Holmes is in prison. The board members moved on. The investors wrote off their losses and funded new companies the following week. And the hundreds of thousands of patients who got those blood tests, most of them never knew anything was wrong. If a fraud happens at scale, and most of the victims never find out, did the system fail? Or did it work exactly as designed? Elizabeth Holmes built a $9 billion company on a machine that didn't work. The machine, it turns out, wasn't the Edison box. It was us.